Last night's episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live began like any other, but there was an underlying tension in the air the moment Harrison Ford stepped onto the set. The 81-year-old actor, iconic for roles like Han Solo and Indiana Jones, carried himself with his usual calm, commanding presence. Jimmy Kimmel, in his usual affable style, welcomed Ford to enthusiastic applause, calling him the man, the myth, the legend. Ford smiled slightly and offered a polite nod as he took his seat. At first, the conversation was light. They chatted about Ford's latest film, joked about his on-set injuries, and shared anecdotes from his decades-long career. But then Kimmel shifted gears. With a sly smile, he asked Ford how he felt about the changing climate in Hollywood, particularly regarding cancel culture. Ford's demeanor didn't change much, but there was a subtle tightening in his jaw. Kimmel leaned in, pressing further, asking if Ford worried about saying the wrong thing in today's charged environment. The studio audience chuckled nervously. Ford's response was calm but direct. He believed people should be allowed to speak their minds without fearing their careers would be ruined by what he called mob mentality. The tension began to thicken. Kimmel picked up on the shift and doubled down. He brought up controversial figures in the industry and asked if Ford thought some had been treated unfairly. Ford didn't flinch but leaned slightly forward, his voice low and firm. "There's a difference between holding people accountable for real wrongdoing," he said, "and destroying someone's life because of an unpopular opinion or a mistake made years ago." Kimmel pushed back, suggesting that celebrities have a responsibility to be mindful of what they say. Ford countered with a sharp retort. "Careful according to whom? You? Twitter? Executives in a boardroom?" The audience, sensing the rising heat, went quiet. Kimmel's tone sharpened. He claimed hate speech should always have consequences. Ford responded with icy steel, questioning who defines what qualifies as hate. Kimmel's grin faltered, and a flicker of genuine annoyance flashed across his face. The back and forth became more intense, no longer resembling the usual late-night banter. It was a clash of values, generations, and philosophies. Ford accused Kimmel of conflating unpopular opinions with bigotry, of reducing complex social issues to sound bites. Kimmel, defensive, insisted he was simply promoting basic human decency. Ford repeated the phrase with visible disdain, highlighting its vague, weaponized nature. The interview spiraled into a full-blown confrontation. Ford's voice sharpened, accusing Kimmel of performance art disguised as activism. "You sit there night after night," he said, "pretending to be a moral compass. But you're just another entertainer chasing applause." Kimmel's facade cracked further. He countered that Ford had no right to lecture anyone about morality while starring in violent blockbuster films. Ford shot back, "Don't confuse my characters with who I am. At least I'm honest about playing a role." The audience sat frozen, the studio crew exchanging wide-eyed glances. Kimmel, visibly flushed, insisted he was just trying to have meaningful conversations. Ford wasn't buying it. "You create division to entertain," he snapped. "You take complex problems and make them punchlines." As the temperature rose, Kimmel stood up, trying to match Ford's imposing presence. He accused Ford of defending discrimination under the guise of free speech. Ford didn't back down. When did comedians become judges of morality? When did questioning the narrative become a punishable offense? The atmosphere was electric, the kind of moment that wasn't just television. It was something far more raw and real. Everyone knew this would be remembered for a long time. Ford finally stood, his voice now a powerful presence that filled the room. He stared Kimmel down and said, "I've spent my life entertaining people honestly. I don't hide behind applause or labels." Kimmel responded, claiming Ford was privileged and disconnected. Ford's fists clenched. "Privilege," he repeated, voice trembling with intensity. "You destroy reputations from behind a desk. I've faced real-world consequences. What have you done?" The crowd was silent, caught between awe and discomfort. Kimmel said he gets threats for speaking truth to power. Ford was incredulous. "My people?" he repeated. "You think disagreement equals hate? That's your problem. You've built a world where anyone who disagrees is a monster." Kimmel, now visibly shaken, accused Ford of enabling bigotry. Ford closed the distance between them. You use words like racism and hate as tools. You're not afraid of those things. You're afraid of dissent. Kimmel insisted that dangerous speech should not be platformed. Ford's reply was cold. You mean speech that disagrees with your orthodoxy? Both men stood like warriors in an ideological duel. Ford accused Kimmel of choosing applause over understanding. Kimmel fired back, calling Ford part of an outdated system unwilling to adapt. But Ford had more to say. The studio could barely contain the energy pulsing through it. Ford walked around the desk, staring Kimmel down with a look that turned colder by the second. You think playing pretend in front of a live audience gives you wisdom? Ford asked. I risked everything to earn trust. You twist trust into judgment. Kimmel shouted that Ford was defending outdated views, that he was blind to the pain those views caused. Ford's voice dropped into a lethal whisper. You think I'm scared of your threats? I've lived through real battles, not Twitter spats and cancel hashtags. The silence in the room became suffocating. Kimmel tried to regain the upper hand, suggesting Ford had been shielded by his fame. But Ford didn't let him finish. You know nothing about courage, he said. Courage is saying what needs to be said, even if it costs you everything. Kimmel, voice cracking, accused Ford of enabling hatred. Ford wasn't fazed. You call anything that challenges your view hateful. That's not activism, it's narcissism. The confrontation had moved beyond politics or ideology. It was about two men fighting to define what truth even meant in modern entertainment. Neither was willing to surrender, but only one seemed fully composed. Ford finally made his exit, offering one last look at the stunned audience. I came here to promote a film, he said calmly, but I found myself staring at the decay of modern discourse. Kimmel, still flustered, tried to call him back. Ford turned, his face carved with disappointment. No, Jimmy, we can't work this out, because working it out would mean listening, something you've forgotten how to do. Then with slow, deliberate steps, he walked off the stage. The silence that followed was heavy. Some audience members tried to clap, others simply stared, unsure of what they'd just witnessed. Within minutes, footage leaked online. Despite efforts to confiscate recordings, clips exploded across social media. Hashtags erupted. Commentators from all sides began weighing in. For many, this was more than a talk show moment. It was a cultural milestone. Kimmel's supporters defended him, but his ratings took a sharp hit. Ford's fan base praised his boldness. The debate reached newsrooms and dinner tables. What counted as accountability? What crossed into censorship? What began as an interview had transformed into something much bigger. A public reckoning with how far we've drifted from meaningful conversation. And somewhere, both men were left to consider what they had unleashed.